Surprisingly, companies don't do their market research. I help brands realize they need to take the time to do their homework, to evaluate the market. Japan Inc. has gotten much more entrepreneurial. It's a great time to start a business in Japan. AI, particularly. I think that medtech, learning tech, fintech as well, are all great topics for Japan. And I know from all of these years, one look at the product line, this will work in Japan.
Hey there, and thank you for tuning in. We're excited to bring you another great conversation today. If you like the show and want to support us, please hit the subscribe button so we can keep bringing you great content week after week. And if you're feeling extra generous, give this video a like and share your thoughts and comments down below. Thank you so much. And now, let's get into it. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Timothy Connor. Thank you so much for coming to Osaka to visit us. You're the unlikely entrepreneur here in Japan, a career that kind of has brought you down many paths, and today you're the founder and president and CEO of Sinovate,
Yes.
A company that helps foreign brands to enter the Japanese market. Your journey has led you to many places and many learnings along the way that I hope we can get something out of today. And as with all our guests, I want to start at the very beginning. And what brought you to Japan in the first place?
Certainly. Well, thank you for having me today. Thank you for your patience and waiting until I could make the time to come on down. But it's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to meet you in person finally.
Yes, it's been a while.
So often people say, so what brings you to Japan? What brought you to Japan? And I won't start with an airplane kind of gag, but I came for 1 year. I came on a program called the MEF program, which then became the JET program.
Oh, okay.
And honestly, I was leaving university. I had spent a year in France. I came back from France convinced that I was going to become a European now. I was going to go back to France after I graduated. And then all of the ways to get a visa back to France were more or less cut off except for student visas.
And the authorities were probably on strike and not handing them out.
Oh, and there was all kinds of things going on politically. And I said, I don't want to be a student again. I thought about it and I said, no. And so on a whim, a friend of mine who had studied at Sophia here the same year I was away said, don't study German, don't study Spanish, you should study Japanese. I was like, why? No, it couldn't happen. But if they teach Japanese at our university this year, I'll do it. Thinking, of course, no way. What were they teaching that year for the first time? Japanese. And what did my Japanese teacher, she was about probably 149 centimeters tall, Aiko sensei. She introduced this program and she said to me, you have to go to Japan, Timothy. You're too tall, you're too big for the country, you'll love it. And so she introduced me to the program. In the interviews for the program, through a number of questions, they said, what would be the most challenging situation for you? And I said, probably being somewhere where I was the only English speaker. So where did I end up? In Morioka, Iwate Prefecture, one of 7 English speakers in the entire prefecture.
Morioka, Iwate. That's a very unlikely place to go to.
It is. It was. It's gotten a little press recently in the New York Times.
Through Craig Modd, who was on a podcast and talked about that story with us. Quite the story indeed.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you very much. Those of us who come from Morioka, and I consider Morioka my hometown in Japan, we laugh about that because we say, what's so cool about Morioka? We don't know. But that's what you think about your hometown. It's a beautiful place. It really is.
Was this a choice or was this by chance that you ended up there?
The program sent me there.
Oh, so they completely decided, because now I know the JET, you can choose 3 options in order of preference, and they tried to kind of accommodate you, but in...
Oh, no, we were told you're accepted and this is where you're going.
Okay.
So I ended up in Iwate for 1 year. 1 year became 2, of course. And at the end of my 2nd year, I was looking around and I discovered that a French fashion design school had opened in Tokyo called Esmo de Japon. And I was still a little bit on the I want to be French mode in somewhere in my heart. And being a sort of long time fashionista, aspiring fashionista, let's say.
I can see you
yes.
have a lot of details.
Thank you very much. Thanks for noticing. I came down to Tokyo and interviewed with the very charismatic school principal, Japanese guy, who taught martial arts in Paris beforehand. And he convinced me to join the school. So I moved to Tokyo. I started the design school about 6 months later, but I got a job teaching in an English school, as you do, in the evenings. And then the following May, I joined Esmo de Japon. So in the morning, I would go to design school. And then from the afternoon on, I would go to the English school, where I had become manager of their largest school.
So after Morioka, you transitioned to Tokyo and kind of study design and going into that world. I'm curious, though, if we talk a little bit more about the Morioka period. You had never really considered moving to Japan. You were like set on going to Europe, and suddenly someone introduces you to you should learn Japanese, which is completely different as a language, in geography, as a culture. And suddenly you end up in Morioka. What was this experience like for you to suddenly arrive and be in this town that is a little bit surrounded by mountains in the northern part of Japan? How did you feel when you kind of arrived there as one of the only English speakers, which was your biggest challenge?
Yeah, it was fascinating, actually. I found it fascinating to go into a grocery store and not know what anything was. Little by little, I was able to sort of figure out, okay, that's what they call yakitori. Okay, I can eat that. Okay, then I figured out what peanut butter is, and I got the peanut butter. And of course, I know bread, so I can buy bread to toast. And I had kind of a boring diet for the first few months as I tried to figure it out. But it was fascinating, and I could step out my door and look, and straight out my door was Iwate-san, the big mountain, which is kind of like a miniature Mount Fuji in shape. But just all of the experiences of being in a place where you couldn't really understand very much of what was going on around you. I mean, my Japanese was little by little, I was understanding more and more studying during the day. But to be honest, I had no idea what was happening. And that was the first time in my life that I felt completely sort of lost. But it was fascinating. It was a fascinating loss, and it kind of energized me in a way.
Yeah. Where did that energy transition into, or how did you use this kind of new perspective of being lost in a new place?
The biggest thing that it gave me was the desire to learn the language, and it really motivated me to learn how to speak and read Japanese. I was absolutely determined. I had mastered French pretty well by then. And so languages were not terribly difficult to me, didn't feel difficult anyway. And so first, just mastering to the degree that you can master it in a year or two, the language, then the culture, and understanding the culture and how they fit together. And you start to really see how things that are going on, the culture that's around you, and the language, and how they fit together was fascinating for me. And so that was kind of the motivation to really learn and understand how people talk, what they're saying, why they're saying it, why they're thinking it.
So during those first 2 years, you kind of study the language, you get used to the culture, the differences, and eventually you're drawn to the big city. You move you move to Tokyo. And you start a career or studying design and working in fashion. That was a big change, going to Tokyo from Morioka. How did that transition happen to suddenly be in this city that was booming and that is, I don't know how many times bigger than Morioka, but quite a few.
It certainly was, yes. I had visited Tokyo a few times while I was in Morioka, but I moved down and moved into my own apartment in Tokyo. In the very beginning, I was just working in the evening as an English teacher, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I was learning the nuts and bolts of teaching, actually. It was learning by learning by doing, and after about 9 months, I had sort of moved into a management position.
Wow.
And I was in this management position. I had 70 teachers actually under me.
70.
70. And now this is not the Eikaiwa English teaching of today, mind you. This is the 1980s. And so we were one of 3-4 schools maybe around, big schools, one of the bigger ones. And part of what I did, two things I learned and had to teach myself as a manager. One was to put together sort of human resource processes.
Yeah, when you have 70 people, you need to.
Yes.
You can't just...
How do you hire? How do you train? How do you keep track, etc.? And how do you make sure that they don't get, let's just say, overworked by the Japanese management? Let's leave it at that. And then the other part of it was, in order to bring people in, we did these 20-minute trial lessons. And so the wife of the founder actually was a top salesman with a company that sold encyclopedias, Grolier International, not known for their laid-back sales efforts.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Quite aggressive. And she was from Kyoto. And she taught us how to deal with the potential students, to make sure they had a great time, let them learn a little something, make sure they have a great time. And it was my first experience learning what I, 15 years later, call customer experience. And it was something that really made an impression on me. And so after the 6 or 7 months when I started design school, as I was coming out of design school and deciding to start my own business, I had a good idea of how I wanted to work with my potential clients based on that, actually. And so I came out very interestingly with this very half creative and half right brain kind of HR processes, sales approach to business as well. And that was kind of the start of getting going on my very first business. It has 2 names, actually. The first brand was Atelier de Steel, and then the company became Art and Design Associates.
So it didn't take you too long in Japan to figure out you want to do your own thing. You want to stand on your own 2 feet and build something. How was that first experience to establish this company? That was still then back in the 80s.
Yes.
And moving out of a job, if you're a manager of 70 people, I imagine it's stressful, but also a relatively comfortable job where you have responsibilities. It's dynamic. You get to learn a lot, but you decide to step out of it to do your own.
Yes. Something I've thought a bit about recently. So I had 70 people. I was dealing with management that was very difficult to deal with, but still I could. It was fairly well paid. But I had somewhere deep in my heart this dream to be a fashion designer.
And you went to design school as well,
and
right? So there was a goal behind.
So I went to design school, and going to design school, coming out of design school, I was learning how to draw, learning a little bit about what we call draping. It's actually pattern making, which I was not very good at. But I came out of design school thinking, okay, that was really interesting. What am I going to do now? And so I had this dream of becoming a fashion designer. And after about 6 or 8 months of just working, I decided to go all in on starting the fashion business. I kept a small consulting gig, if you will, with the teaching company, helping them interview people. But it helped me sort of launch the business with a little bit of income as well.
Make sure the bills are covered, and then the rest of the time can be dedicated to your own.
Yes. And so I was doing one-on-one clothing, designing clothing for various customers, Japanese, non-Japanese, whatever they wanted to make. A lot of people with non-standard sizes.
So unique pieces for kind of tailored to the customer's needs.
Yes, sized and designed for the customer. One of the learnings that I got out of it is that I was spending too much time with the client, working on the client. When you're doing sort of semi-special order pieces, there are lots of changes, lots of meetings, etc. And I didn't realize it at the time. It was only much later that I had spent too much time with the client and not enough time developing new clients. But that was one of my major later learnings from that business.
How long did you kind of work on this?
It was in total, it was about 6 years. I moved away from designing clothes and into designing events, inviting people who wore my clothes, to importing and bringing in, finding and bringing in and importing designer and artist-made products and goods into Japan.
Well, that's super interesting. So it's kind of a very quick evolution from just designing into like events and actually starting in a way bringing brands to Japan.
It is. I was sort of unconsciously realizing that there are a lot of people, a lot of my classmates that were much better designers and than I was. And also that I was much better with the marketing and promotion and strategy. And recognizing when other people's designs or products are very good for the market. And that was kind of the first transition into what ultimately became marketing career for me.
Okay. So you moved out of that. Did you decide to close the company completely and move on to something new at the time, or did you have it in the background and transition?
I basically put it on ice, if you will. And actually, I took a job with a Japanese corporate, a Japanese conglomerate. They had one small subsidiary that I joined as a consultant, and so I very consciously moved away from the design business. Although I could still do it if need be. But I joined this company, the consulting business, or the 2-month consulting project. At the end of it, they invited me to join that subsidiary and run it as president.
Another big transition.
Yes.
So English teaching, fashion designer, and suddenly you work for the subsidiary of a large conglomerate in a Japanese corporate environment.
Yep.
So how do you kind of manage this from the English teaching world, which is a world in itself, and then your independence in a way, and then back into the corporate world with procedures to follow, with Japanese procedures to follow, and completely a new start in a way?
It was. It wasn't entirely foreign to me because it was a training business, but it was a good chance to sort of step away from being a one-man show into a situation where I had a team of people that I was working with. And it was a very fascinating company. It's a listed company now. It's called Kosaido, but they're among their 30-some businesses that they had at the time. This was one of them. They had a big operation here in Osaka, a big building next to Itami Airport.
So you were based in Osaka then?
No, I was based in Tokyo, in Ginza. And so I took over this subsidiary. So I was one of 31 businesses.
What was that experience like, to be a president of a subsidiary at a large company here in Japan?
Well, it was very much the Japanese company experience. So it was a very Showa type company. It's a very Showa type company. We had things like, we had our annual sports day, just like you have in schools, which I encouraged a lot of our staff to join. It's really quite fun, the tug of war and all the rest of it.
Undokai.
Undokai. And we had culture day. So we had just like a bunkamatsuri kind of thing. We had that as well, where some of my staff play guitar, and so they would play the guitar for people. But the other half of it is that it was a Showa era company. It was vastly male dominated. There was maybe one or two manager level women. Otherwise, the women were doing a lot of the work, a lot of the administrative work, wearing the uniforms, etc. But the men sitting at the top of the rows of desks were all Japanese men.
As we see sometimes on TV, a row of workers, and at the very end of it, you have the manager kind of overseeing the...
Exactly. A lot like what you see when you go down to the ward office. And the norms were very strict inside. Now, being non-Japanese and being sort of a favorite of the founder, who was a larger-than-life man, he came back from the war. I think he was in Manchuria. Came back from the war and started a printing business. Because what did the government need more than anything else at the time was things printed on paper like laws, books, etc. And he started it and he ran it like what the only organization he knew, which was the military.
Oh, so a lot of military management practice kind of transferred into that company.
Very much so. So it was very hierarchical. There was.
Can you give an example of like in practice what kind of rules you had to work with?
Well, no, I had a bit of a Teflon covering over me, and there were some rules that I followed by choice. There are things I didn't have to. A lot of it had to do with the hierarchy and who reports to who and why. So there was an incident that I talk about regularly. We had monthly meetings, which are called shachokai. It wasn't all presidents, but it was all division managers and presidents of the various companies. Usually 40, 45 people around a great big giant square table. Tables in a giant square in a large auditorium with the chairman, as he was called, sitting at the top, of course. And whoever happened to be his right hand and favorite, his right hand sat on his right, his favorite on his left.
Okay.
The right hand was his vice chairman for many, many years, without whom he couldn't have built his golf business. And the favorite, well, this changed on a 6 month basis. But I remember this like it was yesterday. We were having a meeting, and he had a man whose title was Bucho, division manager, but he had no staff. It was his title that he got from being in the company for 30 years.
But no staff under him.
No staff.
Division manager with no division 2 manager.
No, every now and again, the chairman would decide to give him a small title raise, maybe increase his salary a bit, probably not that much. But his job was very much to write down what the chairman talked about. And so he gave monthly talks that were usually about a page and a half.
Okay, like a scrivener in a way.
And so he was sort of like he was kind of like the company secretary in a way. He would do all the writing ahead of time. And so every month there was something that came out from the chairman. And that on the first day of the month in every company around the business, people would read it out. And that was the chairman's words for the month.
Kind of like the editor's note in a magazine that comes out, and first you read the editor's note every month in a new publication, and then you go into the magazine and
yes, in form, yes. It was meant to be inspirational. Every other one was about, you are my family. The staff is my family. I treat you like family. He referred to them like family, which of course they weren't, but.
A lot of CEOs in Japan from large corporations tend to do these, right?
Yes.
These philosophical introductions and share them, and all the employees kind of see them not only as a business leader, but kind of like also maybe philosophical or
Yes, philosophical leader is exactly right. There's a word for it that's often used and applied to people like that as well. And so he very much had that role. Now, this is a company that on their 30th anniversary, they invited Yasuhiro Nakasone to come and speak, who you can be assured does not do such things for free for him or anybody in his group. And so it was very much he was very much close to the political, and on the opposite side of the political is the Yakuza side as well, but in the middle. And so he had a very what's the word? I used to refer to him as the sort of benevolent dictator in a way.
Okay.
I think that describes him well. So in this meeting, he wanted to know what something written on a piece of paper that had been done by the company secretary was about. And so he asked that guy to come up. So he said, "You," and he called him by first name, not last name, not San, not Kun, nothing, first name only. And he called him. And so the guy stands up and starts walking to the front. Envision this. Starts walking to the front, and he roars out, "Run!"
Hashire.
Hashire. Actually, it was kakyashe. And it was run. And so the guy had to run up to his side to explain what the words meant. It was incredible. And I remember it to this day like it was yesterday. This is just one example of what it was like.
The kind of event that makes you think twice about doing something wrong or leaving something unclear when you give a report in the future.
Yeah, you wouldn't call this an entrepreneurial environment by any means.
So you have a lengthy experience at this company. You get deep insights into Showa era Japanese corporations, a lot of learnings, and you take this then on, I think, to an MBA.
Yes.
That is the transition to where you are at today, in a way. Yeah. The MBA, was it for you a way to just kind of step out of it for a while and just reflect on your learnings and kind of add some new things to it before continuing your journey in Japan?
The MBA was sort of also a something that I had in the back of my mind that I always wanted to do. I had been running this business, and I felt that I had a lot of the skills to grow the business. And I had been looking at MBAs, and I came up with a plan to grow the business that was going to require some investment. And I put it together, put all the things together, and I took it to the chairman, and he said, no, I don't want to do this. I said, okay, but I want to grow the business somehow or do something. He said, why don't you close this business? And then we're going to move your desk into my office, the chairman's office, and you'll be part of my team in the chairman's office. And so I had no choice but to close the business.
But that was his business.
Yes.
And he asked you to close it just so that you move to work with him in this kind of, let's say, more closed chambers environment.
Yes, it's still kind of foggy about what was the real reason he wanted to close the business. I'm not sure we were making money. It was profitable. We weren't hugely profitable, but still, at the time we were turning over 20 million yen. It was okay.
Financially stable.
But it was around about that time that I got the idea to do my MBA. And I applied to some full-time schools, but I didn't really want to go 2 years away from Japan. And he allowed me to stay working full-time, but take off from time to time, 3 weeks off paid, to go do the 5. Well, I should back up actually. Then I applied to Duke University, whose Fuqua Business School had a brand new program called the Executive MBA. And it was a 5, what are they called?
Modules?
Modules, yeah. 12-week modules, I guess. The first and last based at Duke in North Carolina. And then the second one in Europe, 2 cities. The third one in Asia in 2 cities. And the fourth one in South America, 2 cities. Wow. The company allowed me to take the time off. I paid my own travel.
That's it sounds like a very unique opportunity for a Showa era company that is so strict and following these guidelines.
And he was very, very supportive of it. He thought, this is going to be great. We need an MBA in the company, etc. So I was quite motivated by all this. Now I would come back and sort of go and report to him like I always did over unagi lunch. In retrospect, he did seem to be losing a bit of interest in it after a while. He wanted to talk about himself. He's the chairman. What are you going to do, right? So I went through this program, and it was amazing with 100 other people from all over the world, and creating this cohort of friends. 30 of us are still very, very close friends, which I'll say, we all still say, anybody who's done an MBA, I'm sure will say the same thing. Yeah, learning finance, learning marketing was great, but it's the friends you make. That's really the friends that you make from a program like that is the real treasure you take away. That's your greatest learning from the whole thing. But I came back after my MBA. I had done some projects that he didn't ask me to do on return on investment for some of his golf courses, which were not doing very well. And he said, "Oh, great, thanks, thanks very much." So, the company is in a little bit of trouble right now. And I said, "Yes, how can I help?" He said, "Well, I think I'm the only one who can fix this company. Timothy, you need to go work for an American company." And that was basically my walking papers. And so I got my regular notice, left the company, and that was the end of my Japanese company experience.
That was nearly a decade too, I think.
About 8 years, yeah, about 8 years. I took away from it all of the things that I learned by being inside Japan Inc. I learned how Japan Inc. thinks, how it works, what motivates people really when they're in a meeting and they're not talking, what's really going on, etc. And just the insights that I got from working in this Japanese company were invaluable later on.
What are some of these biggest insights that you took away from it that are still relevant today, very much so?
Well, if you look at a project in Japan from the outside, and you're dealing with a counterparty, a Japanese company counterparty, and you're trying to get a project up and going, and you're wondering what the status of it is. And every time you talk to them, it seems like nothing has been done. Anybody watching this will have had this experience. They said, "Let's meet again in a month." We meet in a month. So what's happened? Well, this, but you feel like there's no progress being made. Having been in the Japanese company, I actually know that progress is being made on the backside. So they're getting all the ducks lined up. They're getting all of the ringisho together with all of the stamps on it, getting all of the various parties together that will need to be involved and ready to go. And so what they're doing is they're preparing for the launch. If the 100% of the work that's needed to launch a project, let's say, in a Western company, from the 20% to 100% on, you pretty much have clarity and insight into it.
Yeah.
In a Japanese situation, the first 80% you have no idea what's happening, and then the final 20%, when they say, "Yes, we're ready to go, and we can go live in a week. Yes, we're ready to go, and we'll have this for you in a month." You're like, how did that happen so quickly?
Because in Japan, there are a lot of procedures. It needs to involve a lot of people, a lot of authorizations. You mentioned paperwork and stamps. But once all of them are in place, everyone is just ready to go and everything can just roll through smoothly without kind of hitting any bumps anymore.
Exactly. And so the company is de-risking the project. And if something comes up in their due diligence to de-risk it, they'll figure something out. And they'll come back to you and ask you for more information. So if you're going through a project, I mean, if you think about the 7&I project with the Canadian company.
The 7-Eleven
yes.
Holdings that was about to be purchased by a Canadian company.
Yes. And they kept bringing up different things over the course of a year. Very similar things happen where you'll be dealing with the Japanese company. You'll give them the information they asked for. A month later, you think you're going to get a result. They come back and say, "Not yet. Could you please also share with us this?" They go away for a month. They come back. "Now, could you also verify these things as well?" And what they're doing is they're de-risking in advance the project so that when they do say, "Okay, we're ready to go," we can press go. It will go, as you said, flawlessly.
In your understanding, why are all these things not done like upfront? Why does it always kind of trickle through during the conversation and the back and forth? Why not ask for all this information at the very beginning? If, for example, you know that to de-risk a takeover, to de-risk a business transaction, you need information A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Why do you only ask for A first and then check and then B and then check and then C, which is basically making the whole process much longer?
It does. And I'm sure every situation is unique in that way. Rarely do you know everything that you need in advance of something that you've never done before. And I think things come up along the way. There's also the fact that Japanese companies and employees don't really like showing that they don't understand what's going on, that they don't know what's going on. They want to make sure that they're doing it right. by the counterparty. So they don't want to they want to make sure that what they've done, the work that they've done, is perfect, basically. So it's a perfectionism kind of thing.
All that experience you've had and these insights into Japan Inc., as you called it, you bring that now to Sinovate, which is your latest venture, a new company you have founded here in Japan, where you do help these brands enter the Japanese market and such. What are some of these big challenges that foreign brands are struggling with when they're trying to come to Japan?
Well, I spent 11 years after that period with a company called Newport, and our business was bringing products and services into Japan, and then putting them into the Japanese market through the channels that our owned channels, which were face-to-face sales.
Okay.
I started wholesale at the company as well, but a lot of the biggest challenges for foreign brands, foreign companies is knowing whether there is a market for their product or service or not, and will their product or service work with Japanese consumers.
Typically, a company would do then market research for these kind of situations. Is the approach to doing market research and getting that information for viability more difficult here in Japan?
Surprisingly, companies don't do their market research.
Really?
Yes. And that's where companies like Sinovate come in. My previous employer, Newport, we didn't do much of this, actual research. But I do much more of it with Sinovate, where I help brands realize they need to take the time to do their homework, to evaluate the market as well. And so that's one of the things that I strongly advise brands that I speak to as well.
Why so little research typically by companies wanting to enter the market? Is it just like an underlying assumption of like, okay, Japan has a strong economy, people like to spend money, there is a market, there must be a market, and therefore we shall enter the Japanese consumer market? Yes,
there are plenty of notable exceptions, but there's a much more general approach from overseas companies, North America or Europe, that especially from America, it sells in America, it'll sell in Japan. It sells well in our home country. Don't the Japanese love British products? Kind of thing. And so they assume that the market is the same. Perhaps part of it has to do with when you look at Japan, it looks like a fully developed, it looks like a Western country on the surface.
In terms of consumerism and kind of the way the systems from the outside work.
Yes, superficially. Large buildings, large trains that run well. All of the systems seem to be the same. They have a democracy, a constitution, people vote, there's a prime minister. Oh, it must be the same as England, must be the same as the US. But we all know, having been here, that underneath it all, it's an Asian country, and it runs completely differently underneath. And if you don't spend the time and if you don't do your homework, it's kind of how I ended up with my Sinovate logo being a rose. In that people think roses, they think it's very attractive, right? Roses are attractive. The Japanese market's very attractive. But roses are known to be very difficult to raise and take care of. The Japanese market looks very attractive, but it seems to be very difficult. When you actually do your homework and figure out how to raise and care for roses, they're not that difficult, actually. When do you cut? When do you give fertilizer? When do you check for bugs? The Japanese market as well. If you do your homework, you find out, you learn what's most important. Trust relationships. How do I get started? Do I need to work with a partner? Kind of thing. And if you do the homework, then when you finally do approach taking care of your rose or taking care of your Japanese market, it's much, much easier. And you realize that roses are very, very hardy. They come back year after year. And Japanese consumers are very, very loyal. And they'll come back year after year if you take good care of them.
So in your experience, what is the best process to enter the Japanese market?
Well, I think process to enter the Japanese market starts with evaluating it, talking to a local expert who has insights. And don't just stop at thinking a Japanese person who speaks English, but somebody who actually has real industry experience, or let's say entry experience in the market. Speak to them and work with them to evaluate the market. Do some digging. What does the distribution system look like in your sector, for example? Who are the big players? And do the homework and learn what the market actually looks like on the inside. What are price points, for example? And then when you have that data, you can make a data-driven decision. How, when do I enter the market? And then how do I enter the market?
You mentioned a little bit earlier the importance of trust here in Japan. It's something that's been mentioned again and again on the podcast. Regardless of the field, Japanese people, Japanese companies like to build trust with their counterparts and like to build long-lasting relationships. It sounds obvious in the West as well. I assume, people want to build trust. You want to work with someone you can trust. But there's something different here. And also, I imagine when you try to build trust when you're overseas, it's more difficult. How is the process to kind of find this Japanese counterpart and build trust and potential partnership when you're not even in Japan yet?
Key point, Toby. You can't enter and grow in the market if you don't have a presence there. There was a time when you could find a so-called distributor, ship them all your product, and hopefully they would sell it for you. But that's of the past now, and you don't need to either. But by doing your homework on the market, visiting the market more than once, meeting people, and as you meet people, keeping in touch with them, so building a trust relationship first with whoever you're working with in Japan, but then with the people you meet as well. Because as you spend more time interacting with them, building a trust relationship, all of Japanese business is built on trust relationships. There's very little transactional, except at the stock market. Whereas a lot of most Western countries, especially the United States, trust is important until the transaction is done, and then that's the end of the.
Then you have a contract, and then you're
done. Yeah. In Japan, you have a contract, but there's always a clause in the contract. There's always a clause that says anything not included will be agreed to by both parties separately.
And that clause means everything.
That clause means everything. That's the gray zone that means everything, and it allows you to avoid any kind of issues that happen to come up. You won't get suddenly cut off by your Japanese partner, for example.
What are some examples of companies that kind of thought it would be easy and tried to enter the market and it just didn't go well at all?
Oh, I love writing about this on LinkedIn. One famous one, and it's famous because of what happened afterwards, is Ikea. Came in the 70s, late 70s, they tried to enter Japan. It was a terrible failure. On their corporate website now, they have a whole page devoted to that failure and what they learned about it.
So they turned that experience into something positive in the long term, but at the moment, what went wrong?
On their website, it says, we didn't do our homework, we didn't study the customers, we didn't learn enough about the consumers. So when they came back, the second time, they came back very thoughtfully, very mindfully. Little by little, they changed the sizes of their products to fit Japanese homes. The height of counters is different. The space where beds go into is different. All those things. So little by little, they adjusted all that. But they maintained that sort of Scandinavian feel in the store, in the way they do things, their signage, the food that they sell. And so that was one of the really good examples, I think.
Where they basically just brought the brand and the product to Japan without adjusting for the local market, and then realizing afterwards, well, everything here is different, the sizes, the spaces, the preferences, and nobody went to buy their furniture.
Yes, and the list of companies that have done that it's a list of some pretty noble brands.
you'd think that with such a big list of companies that have tried and failed at entering the Japanese market, at least on their first try, companies nowadays would be more careful about how they do it. But it seems like it's still going on.
It is still going on. And you would think that companies would at least check into it a little bit. And it goes back to, I keep saying do your homework, but do your homework. Ikea did that and then did well. So what about Carrefour? Carrefour came with big plans in 2000.
The French supermarket chain.
French supermarket chain. What did they do? They hyper-localized. So they're going to do the European hyperstore. Well, I can't remember what the name of what is it? Cheaper every day or something like that. And they sourced locally, etc. It sounds like doing things ideally, right? Suddenly they looked just like Aeon. They looked just like any other supermarket in Japan who had better sourcing and could do better pricing. And suddenly Carrefour, which normally has a very nice French retail vibe to it, just became another supermarket. And they sort of lost its French identity. And they couldn't they couldn't compete with Aeon and Ito Yokado.
Yeah. So they exited the market.
They exited 5 years later. Yeah. Very quietly.
And if we talk about the other side of the coin and positive stories, what are some brands that have done their homework and that have had a very well-established strategy, a successful one, to enter the market and that we can see today here?
An interesting one, actually, because not all you don't have to be a mass market product, is actually Harley Davidson. So Harley Davidson has been in Japan since 1920, when they were selling motorcycles to the military. But over time, what they've done is they've sold the Harley Davidson lifestyle, the Harley Owners Group. And it's very much a lifestyle. It's very much a lifestyle. And so they have this very dedicated group of people who love their Harleys. And they did a lot of things like introducing smaller bikes for the Japanese roads. They created more group Harley Owners Group outings, events, sponsored by the local dealerships, etc. And so they very much maintained their brand personas, the Harley owner kind of lifestyle, if you will. But they made little changes here and there, like the smaller bikes that were more colored differently for Japanese consumers, etc. And so they've maintained this. They have an incredibly strong, loyal fan base.
So this was done through good homework and kind of looking into the market, something you've mentioned a few times now. So that homework, this process for a brand that wants to come to the Japanese market to entry, like how long does it last typically? A lot of companies, I imagine, they want to enter fast. They want to kind of jump on some trend. But in reality, what does it take to really enter from start to finish?
Every sector is going to be different, but it's usually 3 times longer than the overseas brand expects. If you look at the process of evaluating the market, doing the research into the market, evaluating it, and at the same time looking at what distribution model will you use? Will you find an export type distributor? Will you set up yourself here? I think to really get launched, you're looking at 15 months as about the shortest span, probably.
So a year and a half, nearly.
Yes. I think that I'd be happy to hear from anyone who can tell me differently, but to find a distributor in Japan now for new products that are unknown, it's different when you have a famous product that are lesser known. We're talking 6 to 12 months to find a distributor who you can sign up and who may still not be an exclusive, simply because the Japan market is saturated with product. We already have everything we need. And so you really have to have a compelling story. And that's where the local experts come in, I think.
So you have all this experience, all these insights. You write a lot on LinkedIn to kind of reflect on some of these stories, Harley, Ikea and such. And then what people can learn about the Japanese market from it. Where does this leave you today in your career path, which has taken you from English teaching to designing fashion to working at a Japanese corporation to working on the marketing side of market entry, and now again as a unlikely entrepreneur with Innovate. What are you working on today? What are the things that kind of keep you so passionate about these?
Yeah, I've kind of arrived at this place where I realized rather recently. When I came to Japan, I planned to go back to Europe, of course, and I didn't intend to become an entrepreneur when I arrived. And then I started my first business. When I left that to move into the Japanese company, it was a small company subsidiary, and I grew that business. And it wasn't mine, but it was an entrepreneurial business. My third employer was different, but then I started my consulting business, helping new businesses look at Japan, do various things in Japan, which was partly to help out companies that I knew, also partly to find a way to get myself into a small entrepreneurial business as well, which I did. So I started that second one and then moved into the larger Gaishike company. I left the Gaishike to co-found a retail energy company, which was a co-founding. And after two of those businesses helping sell one of them, I started Synovate. And so I founded three of my own businesses, and then I've mostly been involved in entrepreneurial businesses up until now. It hadn't struck me until recently that I never intended to be an entrepreneur. I never considered myself an entrepreneur until recently, the last couple of years, which is why I say I'm the unlikely entrepreneur. It wasn't my plan, but I find myself very, very much enjoying being, for example, mentor to the pre-accelerator and accelerators here that I've worked with. I very much enjoy the opportunity I teach a course in venture management at Globus Graduate School, which is also helping students experience growing stages. And so I've come to realize that unlikely entrepreneur is actually pretty entrepreneurial in the way that he thinks as well. And where am I now? I am now also working on projects that are exactly sort of the culmination of all of this. A good one is a UK 110-year-old UK travel brand called Antler. Used to be known for their fusty suitcases that your grandparents had. Been completely rebranded. One look at it, and I know from all of these years, one look at the product line, and I said, this will work in Japan. And I know it will.
Why?
The colors, the way the brochures have been put together. The marketing is a little bit Eurocentric. Far too many blonde people in the blonde models, but just looking at the way it's sized, the way it's priced, I said, this will work. And it didn't take me long to work out who are the four personas, which I created as well. And so we were finally able to begin our stage one with the brand as we look at what's the best distribution model here in Japan. And that's where I am on that as well. Hopefully within this year, there will be more significant announcements about that.
An exciting new brand entry, a possible brand that we'll see in the stores here in Japan, maybe next year.
Yes.
How have these years of experiences in different fields here in Japan kind of shaped your perspective? Has it changed a lot since your first and early days in Morioka to today? How do you look at Japan Inc. or at your experience and life here in Japan compared to the 80s when you arrived?
Well, one of the things that I've realized, a couple of things, is I've very much evolved as a leader. As most managers do in my very first management role, I thought, okay, bring everything to me, kind of thing. You filter everything, which is a new manager's first biggest mistake. And then I thought it was about power and demonstrating power over people. And I've come to learn that that's not it at all. And actually, good leadership and good management comes from giving people what they need and letting them do what they do well, because people always work on what they like and what they do well, and embracing and trusting people to do the right thing as well. And so I believe that I've come through all this, through this journey as well, that I've grown as a leader as well over time. Hopefully I didn't step on too many toes years ago. I don't think I do these days. So that's one thing. And, parallel to that as well is I don't know that I ever had a lot of the, this bothers me about Japan moments personally. The fact that doorways are lower than I am tall kind of bothers me at times, like all the time. But this gets on my nerves, kinds of things.
This is what your teacher told you, though, back when you started in university.
She did.
She said, "You're tall. You should go to Japan."
Yeah, you're too big.
Yeah.
And that hasn't really changed, but except that it's gotten much more accepting, if you will, about things that happen. And now I know why things happen the way they do. So if I see somebody on the train, rushing in a not very polite manner, you never know what's going on with that person.
There might be something important.
They might be rushing home to take care of a sick child. Just like let it go. And so that's one of the great things I think that being in Japan has allowed me to learn as well.
Has Japan Inc. changed over the years?
Oh yeah. Japan Inc. has gotten much, much more entrepreneurial. It's a great time to start a business in Japan. Is Japan the best place to start a business? Depends what kind of business. Tech businesses are probably better off in Silicon Valley, but Japan is a great place to start a business now. A lot of the support mechanisms that the government is putting in place, visas, etc., are going through some pretty severe growing pains, I think. But it's there, the momentum is there, and the direction is correct for all of them.
What kind of businesses are particularly suitable, in your perspective, to start here in Japan at the moment?
I think that medtech, AI particularly, health tech, learning tech, edutech, if you will, are all great topics for Japan. FinTech as well. Japan has some very robust regulations around FinTech that keep your FinTech business safe, actually.
Oh, interesting.
I think it's a great place for AI, actually. Maybe one of the best places for AI startups.
Is it a bit misunderstood? It feels like when reading online, Japan is always behind in the race for technology, in the race for AI, and very little is being done. But listening to you, it sounds like you are seeing some interesting opportunities develop here.
I am. And I think that we'll see more of them as well. And if you stop and think that AI is global, after all. And where did Sam Altman open his first overseas office? But in Tokyo.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Where is arguably one of the most interesting AI startups with a 30 billion yen initial seed round, but here in Tokyo? Two people who are ex-Google Japan. But AI is very much global. Japan doesn't have, we don't have electricity grid problems like the United States, for example. You don't have to build your own generator here in Japan. And what does AI need but power? And I think that there's a lot more openness to using AI in Japan. Now, people don't think, oh, it's going to take my job away. Perhaps part of it is because they don't understand it. They're not using it well.
Or not using it in the same way as it's being used overseas, perhaps.
Yes. But again, robotics, Japan is a leader in robotics as well. Japanese companies are leaders in so many sectors as well, but they're quiet because they're not very good at self promotion.
Or because they don't want to promote too much and get the spotlight.
Either don't want to or don't know how, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Are unsure, which is a golden opportunity as well.
So a lot of opportunities in Japan. Japan Inc. is changing. You described it as the best time for entrepreneurs to start. Not in every sector, but in some. You've got exciting projects coming up. So there's a lot more coming from you. Is there anything today that we haven't really talked about that you would have liked to get into? Some of your insights into your extensive career here that maybe I forgot to ask about. We've covered quite a bit of ground, but there may be something on your mind.
Yeah. I like talking about the idea of the unlikely entrepreneur and insights that I've gleaned over the years. I had in the back of my mind, how do you look at launching in the market, which you asked about earlier. And it's still mid-process, but I've, thanks to my good friend ChatGPT, I put together a lot of the steps that I think need to happen when a foreign brand comes into the market. And I feel that a foreign brand coming into the market or a startup go through a lot of the same, they have a lot of the same growing pains. They're unknown. They need to put together a lot of things. And so I put them into ChatGPT and I've refined it a couple times through, and asked ChatGPT to create an agent for me. So I now have a Synovate market launch agentic, AI agentic things ready to start using going forward.
Well, that's interesting.
So Synovate is becoming an AI company.
Oh, so you're kind of diving into that field and taking that direction as well, putting to practice what you see as opportunities outside of your usual field.
Yes, and seeing how far can that agentic AI agentic actually take me, and what can I apply it to?
Do you have any expectations for it, or how you see this work out now and putting it into practice?
Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to figure out a way to be able to apply it to both market entry as well as starting businesses. I don't want to call it a template necessarily, but if I can make it faster for overseas brands to understand the process of coming in. Doing it takes time. Doing the whole launch process will take time, but at least
educating
and figuring out and being able to see what that first 15 months is going to look like. That sort of roadmap of the first 15 months will help more brands, or companies for that matter, get excited about what they're doing.
Is this already available?
Not publicly, no.
Not publicly.
No. It's too many. I still have some
quirks
kinks,
to figure out, yeah. But soon people reaching out to you and Synovate will be able to work on their brand and market entry to Japan and working together with you and your agent.
Yes.
Timothy, thank you so much for coming today and for sharing your insights. It was quite interesting to see this journey that's taken you to so many places. One final question. What about fashion? You mentioned that at the very beginning as being something very important, something that you've been interested in, and then it kind of left a little bit your career path. Is it still present somehow for you?
Absolutely. There's a fashion brand in the UK that I looked at bringing into Japan, but they didn't have the resources that I will continue to keep on the radar. The luggage travel brand has a fashion aspect to it as well, but it's always on my radar. A lot of my posts are about the history of fashion in Japan. If you haven't, please check out the post about the Hollywood Ranch Market. He was a pioneer, that one, for example. So yes, it's always still there.
We'll put the link in the description so people can find the post you write, the analysis you share on these companies, their market entry, their history. Very insightful.
Thank you very much. Been a pleasure to be here.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll be back in the next episode. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future conversations. And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, here are a couple more that we think you'll enjoy. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you next time.